The deep hum of the Horizon's engines provided a constant background noise as Allison Wright made her way through the narrow corridors of the research vessel. Her three-fingered hand brushed against the cool metal wall as she hurried toward the command center. The ship had been exploring the abandoned space station for 3 days now, but this morning's discovery changed everything. The doors slid open with a soft hiss. Captain Eli Reeves turned his large oval head toward her. The faint blue glow of his skin intensified with interest, a physical reaction typical of his species when excited. "Tell me again what you found." "Chief Engineer," he said, his voice translator giving his words a slight metallic echo. Allison straightened her uniform. "It's a preservation chamber, Captain, and it contains what appears to be a human." The 5 other crew members in the command center stopped their activities. Humans were creatures of legend, a species believed to have disappeared during the Great Collapse over 200 years ago. Their existence was known only through damaged historical records and scattered artifacts. "Are you certain?" asked Dr. Susan Baker, the ship's xenobiologist. Unlike the captain, Susan's species resembled tall, thin insectoids. Her compound eyes reflected the light from the display screens. "There have been no confirmed human sightings in centuries." "The biological readings match what we have on record," said Allison. "And the chamber is clearly designed for long-term preservation of organic matter. It's human technology from the pre-collapse era." Captain Reeves tapped his long fingers against the command console. "Location? Level 4 of the station, in a sealed compartment. We only found it because the station's power levels dropped enough for our scanners to penetrate deeper into the structure." Greg Howard, the ship's lieutenant, joined the conversation. His reptilian features remained expressionless, but his tail swished back and forth, a sign of excitement. "Is it alive?" "The chamber's systems indicate it is," replied Allison. "The human is in suspended animation, what they called cryosleep. The chamber has maintained full functionality for over 400 years. The captain's skin shifted to a deeper blue. "Remarkable. Should we bring it aboard?" asked Greg. The question hung in the air. The Horizon was a scientific vessel, part of the Galactic Coalition's ongoing mission to study the past and recover lost knowledge. But this wasn't just another artifact. This was a living being from a vanished civilization. "We should leave it alone," said Natalie Peters, the security officer. Her feline features tightened with concern. "We know almost nothing about humans, except that they were dangerous. There are reasons why Coalition protocols advise caution when dealing with pre-collapse technology." Susan's antennae twitched forward, a gesture of disagreement. "This is potentially the scientific discovery of the century. A living human specimen could answer questions we've been asking for generations. Or it could be carrying diseases we have no immunity against," countered Natalie. Captain Reeves raised his hand for silence. "We'll bring the chamber aboard, but keep it sealed until we can properly analyze it in the secure lab. Chief Engineer, prepare a team." Lieutenant Howard helped Security Officer Peters establish containment protocols. Allison nodded. "Yes, Captain." 4 hours later, the cryogenic chamber sat in the Horizon's secure laboratory. The room's transparent walls were reinforced with energy fields, designed to contain anything from microscopic pathogens to explosive reactions. The chamber itself was surprisingly small, just large enough to hold an adult human. Its surface was smooth, with only a small control panel visible. The entire crew gathered outside the lab, watching through the transparent wall as Susan examined the chamber's exterior. "The technology is more advanced than I expected," she said, her voice coming through the communication system. "Based on our historical records, humans shouldn't have had this level of cryogenic expertise before the collapse." "Perhaps our records are incomplete," suggested Owen Fletcher, the communications officer. His gelatinous body pulsed with each word, the natural way his species expressed speech before it was translated into sound waves others could hear. "Can you wake it?" asked the captain. Susan hesitated. "The controls are straightforward, but I recommend we vote. This decision should be shared by the entire crew." Captain Reeves looked around at his team. "This is indeed a historic moment. The Coalition sent us to explore and learn, but this goes beyond our usual mission parameters. I opened the floor for discussion. For the next hour, the crew debated. Natalie argued forcefully against revival, citing security risks. Susan explained the scientific importance. Others expressed curiosity, fear, or excitement. Finally, Captain Reeves called for a vote. Those in favor of reviving the human? 6 hands raised, only Natalie kept her hand down. The majority has decided, said the captain. Dr. Baker, proceed with the revival process. Susan turned back to the chamber and carefully studied the control panel. Beginning revival sequence now. The chamber hummed to life. Soft lights activated along its edges, and the control panel displayed a series of symbols that Susan recognized from their database of human language. The chamber is performing an automated revival sequence, she reported. It's warming the body gradually and preparing to administer stimulants to awaken the subject. Greg monitored the readings from outside the lab. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the chamber. They don't match our records of human cryotechnology. Could our records be wrong? Asked Allison. Possibly, said Greg. But these readings suggest a power source we're unfamiliar with. Before they could discuss further, the chamber's top section began to slide open. A cold mist spilled out and dissipated in the lab's air filtration system. Everyone fell silent as they got their first look at a living human. He appeared male, with pale skin and short brown hair. His features were unremarkable by the standards. In their historical database, he wore a simple gray jumpsuit with no visible markings or insignia. For several moments, the human didn't move. Then suddenly his eyes opened. They were blue, a detail that struck Allison as oddly significant. Susan approached carefully. Hello? Can you understand me? The human's eyes focused on her insectoid form. Instead of showing fear or confusion, he simply blinked and then spoke in a calm, clear voice. I understand you perfectly. My name is Henry Carson. The translation system worked flawlessly, converting his speech into something the crew could understand. How is this possible? Susan asked, her scientific curiosity overriding protocol. You shouldn't be able to comprehend our language. The human named Henry slowly sat up, his movements smooth and controlled despite centuries of inactivity. There's a great deal that shouldn't be possible, he said. Looking around the lab and then at the crew watching from outside, his gaze lingered on each of their alien forms without a hint of surprise or fear. Yet here we are. Captain Reeves stepped closer to the transparent wall. Welcome aboard the research vessel Horizon. I am Captain Eli Reeves of the Galactic Coalition. Henry Carson turned to face him. The human's lips curved slightly upward in what their historical records identified as a smile, but something about the expression made Allison's skin prickle. With unease, the Galactic Coalition, Henry repeated softly. How interesting. You know, where I come from, we have a saying, curiosity killed the cat. No one understood the reference, but as Henry Carson stood up and stretched his arms, Allison couldn't shake the feeling that they had made a terrible mistake. The medical bay of the Horizon buzzed with activity. It had been 6 hours since they revived the human, and Dr. Susan Baker had not stopped taking readings and samples. Henry Carson sat patiently on the examination table, allowing the tests. Without complaint, his calm demeanor continued to unsettle the crew. Your body shows no signs of cellular degradation, Susan said, reviewing the results on her tablet. That should be impossible after centuries in cryosleep, Henry shrugged. Your technology is different from ours. Perhaps you don't fully understand human physiology. Captain Reeves stood nearby, watching the examination. According to our records, humans disappeared during the Great Collapse. We believed your species went extinct. Henry's face showed a flicker of amusement. Disappeared. Yes, extinct, not exactly. The captain and Susan exchanged glances. This contradicted everything in their historical database? Would you care to explain? Asked Captain Reeves. Henry looked directly at him. Captain, have you ever considered that some things remain hidden because they choose to be? Before the captain could respond, the door to the medical bay slid open. Security Officer Natalie Peters entered, her tail stiff with tension. "Captain, may I speak with you?" she asked, her eyes never leaving the human. Captain Reeves nodded and stepped outside with Natalie. In the corridor, she activated a privacy field to prevent their conversation from being overheard. "I've been researching what little we know about humans," she said in a low voice. "They were known for deception and strategic thinking. I don't trust this one. He's alone on a ship full of beings he's never encountered before," the captain replied, "yet he shows no fear. That suggests either remarkable courage or he doesn't feel threatened by us," Natalie finished, "which raises concerning questions about what he knows that we don't." Inside the medical bay, Henry stood up and stretched. Susan watched him closely. "You adapt quickly to our artificial gravity," she observed. "I've always been good at adapting," Henry replied. He walked around the room, examining the equipment with interest. "Tell me, Doctor, what does the Coalition know about Project Sentinel?" Susan's antennae twitched in confusion. "I'm not familiar with that term." Henry nodded as if her answer confirmed something. "I'd like to see more of your ship, if possible." "That decision is up to the captain," Susan replied. She couldn't help but notice how easily the human moved, how quickly he had recovered from cryosleep. The historical records suggested humans required extensive rehabilitation after even short periods of suspended animation. When Captain Reeves returned, Henry made his request again. "I understand your caution," Henry said, "but I've been asleep for a very long time. Some movement would help me recover." The captain considered this. "Lieutenant Howard will escort you on a limited tour. Certain areas remain restricted." Greg Howard entered a few minutes later. The reptilian officer nodded stiffly to the human. "This way, please." As they walked through the corridors, crew members stopped to stare at the human. Most had never expected to see a living specimen of this legendary species. "Your ship is impressive," Henry commented. "The Coalition has achieved much. We've had centuries of peaceful cooperation between species," Greg replied with pride. "The Coalition spans 3 galaxies now." Henry absorbed this information without surprise. "And you explore abandoned stations like the one you found me in? Looking for what, exactly?" "Knowledge, technology, understanding of the past." Greg led them into the observation deck, a large room with transparent walls that offered a view of space. The abandoned station was visible in the distance. "And what do you know about humans?" Henry asked, gazing out at the stars. Greg hesitated. "Not much. Your species created remarkable technology but was also prone to conflict. Records suggest humans were responsible for several extinction-level events before the collapse. Is that all?" Henry's tone was light, but his eyes had hardened. "There are stories," Greg admitted, "legends, really, that humans developed abilities beyond normal evolution, that you were on the verge of becoming something else entirely when the collapse happened." Henry turned to face him. "Legends often contain truth, Lieutenant. We were indeed becoming something else." In the command center, Allison Wright monitored the tour through the ship's security system. Something about the human's movements caught her attention. "Captain," she called. "Look at this." Captain Reeves joined her at the console. The screen showed Henry and Greg in the observation deck. "What am I looking for, Chief Engineer?" "Watch how he moves," Allison said. "He's deliberately slowing himself down. I've been studying human movement patterns from our historical records. His muscle control is too perfect." On the screen, Henry approached one of the control panels near the observation window. Greg quickly stepped forward. "That area is restricted," the lieutenant said. Henry stepped back immediately. "My apologies. Curiosity is a human trait." Later, the senior crew gathered in the briefing room without their guest. Henry had been returned to the medical bay, where Susan had recommended he rest. "He's not what we expected," Captain Reeves said. "Dr. Baker, your assessment?" Susan brought up her findings on the main display. "His genetic structure shows signs of extensive modification. This goes beyond normal evolution or even advanced genetic engineering as we understand it." Some aspects of his cellular structure don't match any known biological pattern. What does that mean? Asked Owen Fletcher, his gelatinous body pulsing with concern. It means, Natalie interrupted, that he's not just a human. He's something else. Allison added, during his tour he accessed 3 different terminal interfaces without Lieutenant Howard noticing. The security logs show brief connections lasting less than a second each. Could he understand our technology that quickly? Captain Reeves asked. No, Allison said firmly. It should be impossible, Natalie's fur bristled. We need to secure him immediately. Agreed, said the captain. Security team to medical bay. But when they arrived at the medical bay, they found the doors already locked. Through the transparent walls, they could see Henry sitting calmly on the examination table, looking directly at them. He raised his hand in what appeared to be a greeting. Then, to their shock, every screen in the medical bay lit up simultaneously. Information began scrolling at impossible speeds. He's hacking our systems, Allison gasped. How is he doing that without even touching the controls? Henry stood and approached the door. The security field should have prevented any communication. But somehow his voice came through clearly. I think it's time we had an honest conversation, he said. Your ship has been sending automated distress signals for the past hour. Strange, since there's no emergency, at least not yet. Captain. Reeves stepped forward. What have you done? Nothing harmful, Henry replied. I simply needed to confirm something. You're not the first coalition ship to find one of us. You're just the first to wake one of us up. The overhead lights flickered. The ship's engines changed pitch, Henry smiled. Now they know I'm awake. And they're coming. Alarms blared throughout the horizon as the crew rushed to regain control of their ship. Captain Reeves stood outside the medical bay, watching Henry through the transparent wall. The human appeared completely at ease despite the chaos he had created. Override the medical bay security, the captain ordered. Allison's fingers moved rapidly over her portable terminal. I can't, Captain. He's locked us out of all primary systems. Natalie drew her weapon. We should breach the door. I can stun him before he reacts. No, Captain Reeves said firmly. We don't know what he's capable of. Shooting him might trigger something worse. Inside the medical bay, Henry watched their discussion with apparent interest. He tapped the communication panel on the wall, and his voice came through the ships. Speakers, I suggest we talk, Captain. I mean your crew no harm. Captain Reeves approached the transparent wall. You've taken control of my ship. That seems harmful to me. A precaution, Henry replied. I needed to ensure my safety while we established trust. Trust? Natalie hissed. You've hacked our systems and sent unauthorized signals. Henry nodded. Let me explain what's happening. I'll restore your systems as a show of good faith. The alarm suddenly stopped. The lights returned to normal, and Allison's terminal showed that they had regained access to the ship's controls. He's released the lockdown, she confirmed, surprise evident in her voice. Captain Reeves studied Henry carefully. We're listening. Henry sat on the edge of the examination table. Humans didn't go extinct during what you call the Great Collapse. We chose to disappear. Susan moved closer to the wall. Why would an entire species choose to vanish? Protection, Henry said. Simply both yours and ours? When we detected the first signs of interstellar civilizations developing, we realized we had a choice to make. He stood and began to pace slowly around the medical bay. Humanity had reached a critical point in our evolution. We had developed technologies that allowed us to exist in spaces between normal dimensions pockets adjacent to conventional reality. Greg frowned. That's not possible. For your science, perhaps not, Henry conceded. But we discovered methods to slip between the layers of reality. We created enclaves where we could continue to develop without influencing younger species. Like a quarantine? Susan asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. In a way, Henry nodded. But we didn't completely withdraw. We left observer sentinels placed throughout known space, preserved in stasis until discovered. I am one such sentinel. Captain Reeves crossed his arms. You expect us to believe that humans have been hiding in some other dimension, watching US for centuries? Not believe, Captain, no. Henry touched the medical bay's control panel, and the main screen displayed a series of images stars viewed from impossible angles, structures that seemed to bend reality and beings that resembled humans but with subtle, unsettling differences. These are my people now, Henry explained. We've continued to evolve, both naturally and through deliberate modification. What you see as me hacking your systems isn't technology at all, it's a form of direct mental interface we developed. Centuries ago? The crew stared at the images in stunned silence. Owen Fletcher was the first to speak. If what you're saying is true, why reveal yourselves now? Why were you left to be found? Henry's expression grew serious. To evaluate? Evaluate what? Demanded Natalie. You, the Coalition, your potential as either allies or threats. Henry gestured toward the abandoned station visible through the observation window. That station wasn't randomly abandoned. It was positioned specifically for this purpose. Allison looked up from her terminal with growing alarm. Captain, I'm detecting energy fluctuations in the space around us. Something's happening. Captain Reeves turned back to Henry. What have you done? What's coming? My people, Henry said. Calmly. Your discovery of me triggered an automated signal. Standard protocol for awakened sentinels. The ship suddenly shuddered. The view from the observation deck changed as space itself seemed to ripple and distort. We need to run, Natalie urged. We should activate the jump drives. Henry shook his head. It's too late for that. But you don't need to be afraid. This is simply first contact, official first contact. The medical bay door slid open. Henry stepped out, and Natalie immediately raised her weapon. Don't, Captain Reeves ordered. If what he says is true, that won't help us. Henry walked past them toward the observation deck. The crew followed cautiously, uncertain of what was happening. When they arrived, they gasped collectively at the sight before them. 3 enormous vessels had appeared from nowhere. They dwarfed the horizon, their design unlike anything in Coalition records. They didn't seem to reflect light properly, appearing almost like tears in the fabric of space. How did they get here? Greg whispered. Our sensors didn't detect any approach. They didn't approach in conventional space, Henry explained. They transitioned directly from our dimension to yours? Captain Reeves stared at the impossible ships. Are they going to attack us? That depends on my report, Henry said. My mission was to evaluate whether your coalition poses a threat to humanity or whether you have potential as allies. And your conclusion? Susan asked. Henry turned to face them. That's still being determined. I was awakened to study you, to understand your intentions and capabilities. So far, I've seen a mixture of scientific curiosity, caution, and fear all reasonable responses. Allison's terminal beeped urgently. Captain, we're being scanned. Every system on the ship is being accessed simultaneously. They're learning everything about us, Henry confirmed. Your technology, your biology, your history, it's standard procedure. Natalie stepped forward angrily. You had no right to bring them here. We're not a threat to you. We didn't even know you existed until today. Henry's expression softened slightly. That's exactly why I was placed here, Officer Peters. To make that determination before full contact was established. Captain Reeves straightened his posture. As representative of the Galactic Coalition, I formally request communication with your leaders. That's not how this works, Henry replied. I'm afraid you misunderstand the situation. This isn't a diplomatic mission. It's an assessment. The largest of the 3 vessels began to emit a pulsing light. Henry turned to watch it, his eyes reflecting the strange glow. They're ready for me to return and deliver my initial findings, he said. What happens next depends on what I tell them. And what will you tell them? Captain Reeves asked quietly. Henry studied the crew one by one. The truth, of course, that you woke me out of scientific curiosity, that you debated the ethics of doing so, that when threatened, your first instinct wasn't to destroy me, but to understand. The pulsing light intensified. I need to go now, Henry said. But this isn't the end of our interaction. It's only the beginning. A shimmering field of energy began to form around him. Wait, Susan called out. Why did humans really hide themselves away? Was it really to protect younger species, or was it to protect yourselves? Henry's form was already beginning to fade, but his final words echoed clearly through the observation deck. Ask yourselves this: what would make an entire species disappear? From known space, not extinction, not fear. Something far more fundamental: memory. We remembered what happened the last time humans weren't the most advanced beings in the room. And with that he vanished, leaving the crew of the Horizon facing 3 impossible ships and the dawning realization that everything they thought they knew about the universe had just changed forever. The bridge of the Horizon fell silent as Henry vanished. The 3 massive human vessels remained motionless in space, their strange surfaces still resembling tears in reality more than solid objects. Captain Reeves was the first to recover from the shock. "Status report," he ordered, his voice steady despite the extraordinary situation. Allison checked her terminal. "All systems are functioning normally again. Whatever control Henry had over our ship is gone. Can we send a message to Coalition headquarters?" the captain asked. Owen Fletcher shook his head, his gelatinous body rippling with stress. "All long-range communications are being blocked. We can't send or receive any signals beyond our immediate vicinity." Natalie paced the bridge, her tail lashing back and forth. "We need to prepare defensive measures. If those ships attack, our weapons would be useless," Greg interrupted. "Did you see how they appeared? No warp signature, no fold space distortion. They just ... materialized." Susan stood by the observation window, staring at the human vessels. "They're not going to attack," she said quietly. "At least not yet. Henry said this was an assessment. They're waiting for his report. Which means we still have a chance to influence the outcome," Captain Reeves concluded. He turned to face his crew. "We need to understand what's happening. Here, Dr. Baker, what do you make of Henry's claims about human evolution?" Susan's antennae twitched thoughtfully. "Based on what we observed, humans have developed abilities far beyond what our science can explain. The direct mental interface he mentioned suggests they've integrated their consciousness with technology. Somehow, or evolved beyond the need for external technology altogether," Allison added. "The way he controlled our systems without physical contact ... But why hide?" Greg asked. "If humans became so advanced, why disappear instead of joining the galactic community?" Before anyone could answer, a soft chime sounded from Allison's terminal. "Captain, I'm detecting a new energy signature. One of the vessels is sending something toward us." A small object materialized on the bridge, a floating sphere about the size of a fist, glowing with soft blue light. The crew stepped back cautiously. "Don't touch it," Natalie warned, raising her weapon. The sphere expanded suddenly, projecting a 3-dimensional image of Henry. He looked slightly different now. His eyes had a subtle luminescence, and his skin seemed to shimmer with faint patterns that hadn't been visible before. "Greetings again, crew of the Horizon," the projection said. "I've delivered my initial assessment to my superiors. They have questions." Captain Reeves stepped forward. "We have questions too. You've invaded our space, taken control of our ship, and now you're blocking our communications. These are hostile acts." The projection of Henry smiled. "From your perspective, perhaps. From ours, they're precautions. You must understand, Captain, this moment has been planned for centuries. The awakening of a sentinel is not a random event." "What do your superiors want to know?" Susan asked. "They want to understand why you chose to revive me. Was it merely scientific curiosity or something more?" Captain Reeves considered his words carefully. "We are explorers and scientists. We revived you because we believed your species was extinct. The opportunity to learn from you, to understand what happened to humanity, was too valuable to ignore." The projection nodded. "And now that you know we aren't extinct but have been watching from the shadows, does that change your assessment of the situation?" "It raises concerns," the captain admitted. "Any species with the power to hide from detection for centuries while observing others could be seen as a potential threat. Honesty, the projection commented. That's good. My superiors appreciate directness, Natalie stepped forward. Why? Are humans divided on whether to contact us? That's what you implied earlier, that some of your people want to remain hidden. The projection turned toward her. Not all humans agree on how to approach younger species. Some believe in non-interference, allowing civilizations like yours to develop naturally. Others see potential benefits in open contact and alliance. A third faction advocates for more direct management of potentially dangerous species. Management? Greg repeated, tension evident in his voice. Humans have long memories, Lieutenant Howard, the projection explained. Before we developed our current abilities, we encountered other advanced species. Those encounters did not always end well for humanity. Allison had been quietly working at her terminal while the conversation continued. She caught the captain's eye and subtly indicated she had found something. Captain Reeves gave her a small nod. You mentioned humanity remembers what happened the last time you weren't the most advanced species, Susan said, drawing the projection's attention away from Allison. What exactly happened? The projection's expression darkened. Subjugation, experimentation, near extinction. The details aren't important now, those species are long gone. What matters is the lesson we learned: technological advantage equals survival. While the projection spoke, Allison quietly showed her findings to Greg and Owen. Their expressions registered shock, but they remained silent. And what happens now? Captain Reeves asked. What have your superiors decided about us? They're still deliberating, the projection replied. Your crew's reaction to first contact has been noted. Your restraint is commendable. Many would have attempted to destroy the cryo chamber or attack me when they realized what was happening. We're not violent by nature, the captain said. The coalition was founded on principles of cooperation and mutual benefit. So your historical records claim, the projection replied. But recent coalition military expeditions into several border regions suggest other motivations may be emerging. Captain Reeves frowned. What regions are you referring to? Areas you designated as uninhabitable dead zones, areas that, in reality, contain several of our monitoring outposts. The projection's eyes flashed. Did you think those regions were empty by chance, Captain? They were marked for a reason. Natalie moved closer to the captain. They've been manipulating us, she whispered, setting boundaries we didn't know existed. The projection seemed to hear her. Not manipulation. Officer Peters, guidance. Many of your species' technological leaps weren't entirely your own achievements. The implication stunned the crew into silence. Finally, Susan spoke up. You've been helping us advance? Why? Potential, the projection said simply. Despite your differences, your species formed a coalition that has lasted centuries. That suggests you might be ready for the truth about your place in the universe. The sphere suddenly pulsed brighter. The projection of Henry looked up as if listening to something only he could hear. A decision has been made, he announced. My superiors wish to conduct a more thorough evaluation. They require direct interaction. Captain Reeves straightened his posture. What does that mean? Exactly? It means, the projection said as the sphere began to expand, that they're coming aboard. The sphere grew until it was large enough for a person to step through. The light within shifted and swirled, forming what appeared to be a doorway to somewhere else. From within this impossible portal, a figure emerged, not Henry, but another human. This one was tall and female, with dark skin and eyes that glowed with the same subtle luminescence as Henry's had in the projection. Captain Eli Reeves, she said in a voice that seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds. I am Lisa Daniels, Observer First Class. I'll be conducting the final phase of your evaluation. Behind her, more figures began to appear at the edge of the portal. The crew of the Horizon realized with growing apprehension that the humans had not just returned from hiding, they had come to judge. The bridge of the Horizon had never seemed so small. Lisa Daniels stood calmly in the center, her presence somehow filling the space more completely than her physical form should allow. Behind her, the portal shimmered, revealing glimpses of other humans waiting beyond. Captain Reeves stepped forward, maintaining his composure despite the extraordinary situation. Welcome aboard the Horizon. I am Captain Eli Reeves of the Galactic Coalition. Lisa nodded slightly. We know who you are, Captain. We've been monitoring your career since you were assigned your first command. The revelation sent a chill through the crew. Lisa turned her luminous gaze toward each of them in turn, studying them with unnerving intensity. Henry has provided his initial assessment, she continued. But the decision regarding the Coalition's future requires more direct evaluation. What kind of evaluation? Natalie asked, her hand still hovering near her weapon despite knowing it would be useless. Lisa smiled slightly. One that will determine whether your civilization deserves to continue its independent development or requires more direct supervision. The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. Captain Reeves straightened his posture, determined to represent his people with dignity. The Coalition has existed for centuries without intervention, he said. We've developed peaceful relations between species that once warred with each other. We've explored the stars without conquering them. What gives you the right to judge? Us now, Perspective Captain, Lisa replied. You see only what's in front of you. We see patterns across millennia. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the air, showing star maps and trajectories. Your exploration paths, resource acquisitions, military buildups, all following predictable patterns we've seen before. Patterns that lead to... What? Susan asked. Expansion, conflict, eventually the strong dominating the weak. Lisa's eyes flashed. It's happened thousands of times across countless civilizations. Not with us, Greg insisted. The Coalition was founded on principles of equality. So were many empires that became conquerors, Henry said. Stepping through the portal to join Lisa, he looked different now, more confident, more alien somehow despite his human appearance. Initial intentions rarely survive the test of time. And power. Allison, who had been quietly working at her terminal, suddenly spoke up. You've been testing us all along, haven't you? The abandoned stations, the dead zones, even the historical records we found about humans, they were all planted. Lisa turned to her with approval. Very good, Chief Engineer Wright. Yes, much of what you think you discovered was placed for you to find. We needed to understand how you would interpret and use that information. Captain Reeves felt a surge of anger. You've been manipulating us like laboratory specimens. We prefer to think of it as responsible observation, Henry replied. Would you rather we had revealed ourselves before understanding your intentions? Before knowing if you would see us as allies or resources to exploit? Susan moved forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. The advancements you mentioned technologies that weren't entirely our own achievements. Which ones? Faster than light travel, Lisa said. Artificial gravity. Universal translation systems. All based on principles we allowed you to discover. The crew exchanged shocked glances. Their most significant technological achievements had been guided all along. Why? Captain Reeves demanded. Why help us advance if you're so concerned about what we might become? Because potential deserves opportunity, Lisa replied simply. Your species formed the Coalition despite your differences. You chose cooperation when conflict would have been easier. That deserved recognition. And now? Natalie asked. What happens now? Lisa looked at Henry, who nodded slightly. Now we make a choice, she said. Humanity has remained hidden for centuries, watching from the spaces between dimensions. Some of us believe it's time to emerge, to take our place openly in the universe again. Others believe we should remain separate, continuing to observe, but not interfere directly. And some, Henry added, believe the Coalition should be guided more firmly, to prevent it from following the path of other failed civilizations. Captain Reeves understood the gravity of the moment. And which group are you with? I believe in potential, Lisa said. And second chances, she turned to Henry. Which is why Henry's assessment was so important. He was specifically chosen for this mission because of his balanced perspective. What was your assessment, Henry? Susan asked. Henry looked at each crew member before answering. That despite your fears, your first instinct wasn't to destroy what you didn't understand. You sought knowledge instead of power. You showed restraint when threatened. These are promising signs, Lisa nodded. Based on his report and my own observations, I've made my decision. She raised her hand and the portal behind her expanded. Captain Reeves, I would like to invite you and 2 crew members of your choice to visit our enclave. The offer stunned everyone on the bridge. Natalie immediately protested. Captain, this could be a trap. If we wanted to harm you, Lisa said calmly, we could have done so at any time. This invitation is unprecedented. No non-human has ever been allowed to see our true home. Captain Reeves considered carefully. What would be the purpose of this visit? To begin understanding each other, Lisa replied. To establish the foundation for what might become a new relationship between humanity and the Coalition. And if we refuse? The captain asked. Then we return to observation mode, Henry said. We continue watching from the shadows, occasionally guiding when necessary, but without open contact. Captain Reeves looked at his crew, seeing the mix of fear and wonder on their faces. He made his decision. I accept your invitation. Dr. Baker and Chief Engineer Wright will accompany me. Lisa nodded approvingly. A wise choice. Scientific curiosity and technical understanding will serve you well where we're going. Henry stepped toward the portal. We should leave immediately. The transition can be disorienting for first-timers. Susan and Allison moved to stand. Beside their captain, Captain Reeves turned to Greg. Lieutenant Howard, you have command of the horizon until our return. If we're not back within 24 hours, return to Coalition space and report everything that's happened. Greg nodded solemnly. Understood, Captain. Good luck. As the 3 crew members approached the portal with Lisa and Henry, they could see a strange landscape beyond a place where the laws of physics seemed more like suggestions than rules. Buildings floated without support, light moved in impossible patterns, and distant figures shifted between forms that their minds couldn't quite process. What you're seeing is just your minds attempting to interpret our reality, Lisa explained. It will become clearer once you're fully inside. Captain Reeves took a deep breath and stepped forward, followed closely by Susan and Allison. As they passed through the threshold, they felt a brief sensation of being everywhere and nowhere at once. On the other side, they found themselves standing in what appeared to be a vast chamber filled with humans of various appearances, all watching them with curious, luminous eyes. Some looked almost normal, while others had clearly evolved into something beyond baseline humanity. An older man with silver hair approached them, his presence somehow more substantial than the others. Welcome, he said, his voice resonating in their minds. I am Director Alan Bennett. On behalf of humanity, I welcome the first representatives of the Galactic Coalition to New Terra. He extended his hand to Captain Reeves in an ancient human gesture of greeting. We have much to discuss about our shared future. As Captain Reeves reached out to shake the offered hand, he couldn't help but reflect on the irony. His crew had thawed a human from Cryo and instantly regretted it, but that moment of regret had led to the most important first contact in Coalition history. The future of their civilization now hinged on what they would learn in this impossible place, among the descendants of a species that had chosen to disappear rather than remain as they were. Whether that future would bring partnership or subjugation remained to be seen. But as he looked into the eyes of Director Bennett, Captain Reeves saw something that gave him hope, recognition. Not of an inferior species to be managed, but of kindred explorers on different paths through the same vast universe. The real evaluation was just beginning.